think if we can start off, each of you are quite different in who you work with, who you work for, and the investment kind of process that you work through. Do you want to talk a little bit about what you look at investing in, if that's okay? Paul, do you maybe want to start?
And in fact, the two brands you mentioned, I haven't invested in. So I've invested in lots of other brands.
Sorry.
So I tend to look for, in terms of type of business, I think of the restaurant world as a series of segments. And of course, investing is all about building scale. So I like big segments, which tends to take me into kind of relatively mainstream areas. But I like to find something new in that mainstream area. So over the years, I've invested in businesses like Gourmet Burger Kitchen. So of course, burgers have been around forever, but GBK did it with a quite a fresh twist at the beginning of the 2000s. Hawksmoor is another restaurant I've invested in. It's a steak restaurant, and again, people have been eating steak and chips for many, many years, but Hawksmoor did it with a certain style and innovation. Vinoteca is a wine bar, etc. So, I'm quite brave in that I go in early to investments, but I'm not so brave that I go into things that are too out there.
Okay. Michael?
Yeah, well, so I'm working with the Claus Meyer group, and we actually have both hats on, as we are an angel investor in some restaurants in New York and also in Scandinavia. And then we're also working with investors in our own right, where we're going as operators. And I think that what we're looking for when I put on my investor hat are really ambitious, probably smaller, more niche restaurateurs who can try to make a difference in their field and who can push the envelope a little bit in the culinary world. And where we can see that there's also a match in the values between our group, where we try to work with the local community and work with the local producers and really try to make a difference in that respect. And I think that what is interesting there is to see how we then can go in there and help these people grow. And I think that's one of the things we're going to talk about afterwards.
Great. Laurent?
Yeah, well, just to say that I came from a Stuart world, because for all my life I spent expanding a brand of a chef all over the world, and it was not a British chef, but he was a French chef, and traveling all over the world, I find that France, when we talk to food, is a great brand. But we have a lot of very talented chefs, very talented entrepreneur, very good brand, small size, because in our country, a lot of people doesn't even speak English. They don't want to travel. And our aim at French Food Capital is to help these people to leverage their know-how, their brand, to go abroad, to scale their company in France and outside. That's what we want to do. And we are very focused on companies that look at the customer side, whether it is a brand, and that understands that the customer today, but we talked a lot this morning, is not, doesn't want to eat the same thing he used to eat yesterday, and tomorrow he won't want to eat the same thing he eat today.
And you're looking at both food concepts and restaurants.
Yes, sorry about that. Yes, I'm looking at everything that you can eat or drink, whether it is a restaurant or product.
That's great. Still keeping it down that path, which is good. And I suppose before we come on to what you guys are specifically doing, it'd be interesting for people in the audience who maybe haven't been through the process. What do you think any investor is adding in terms of value? And then we'll go down the specifics of why we think each of you stand out in a different way. But do you want to start maybe, Paul?
I could probably link back to something that Stuart mentioned in the earlier presentation. I think investment is not just a process of getting money into a business, it's also a bit of a workout for a business. So it's not unusual for businesses not to be ready for investment, but the process of getting investment actually is a healthy one, I think, because it often, as Stuart said, causes businesses to look at things they perhaps haven't looked at before. And I think mostly that is good stuff that it's looking at. I think once I'm invested in a business, what I'm looking for is a lot about the kind of management attitude and the management ambition and management ability. There's a whole load of other things, but if you haven't got that, then really you're going to find it hard work pushing a business forwards.
So that's similar for you, Mikael?
Yeah, I think that's very right. And I think that as an investor also, what I've also be looking at is, I think for at least for a lot of people in the hospitality sector, once an investor comes in, it's the first time that it goes from being entrepreneurially driven to being part of a larger group, and actually somebody who can go in and challenge the founder. And I think that I've seen a lot of people who are not capable of making that transition. I think they can be brilliant chefs or businessmen or restaurateurs, but if they think they are right in every decision, then I think it's really, really difficult and dangerous for an investor to get involved. So I think that would be one of my first things to check off.
And would you say that's
Yeah, I would say that it's like the momentum. It needs to be the right momentum for the company, for the product, that you believe that it's time for this company to have investment and to be scaled up. And then for us, I want to be like close to my investments because I thought that we will add better value if it's in a market we understand. That's why we invest mainly in France, whether it is in or out.
Mm-hmm. And
you can touch my.
I know that's fine. That's fine. For each of you, it's quite interesting that the management piece is quite important. But, and it's interesting, Laurent, that you said about being quite hands-on, because I know that for many people that I've met, it's the last thing they would necessarily want from an investor. I mean, do you come across that in what you all do?
I'm not hands-on as an investor, so I tend to be a minority shareholder, so I'm a supportive investor. Clearly, you have rights and you have kind of legal protections as any investment would carry. But what I'm looking for is I invest early into businesses, so typically it might be 1 or 2 restaurants at the stage when I invest. I've even invested in some startups in the past few years, which is incredibly exciting and clearly can go one of 2 ways. But if it's successful, it can be very lucrative. But I want the management, the founder, to be the person who takes the business on. I think restaurant businesses that are still run by the founders have a natural advantage over big corporates because I think their passion, their energy, their entrepreneurial spirit comes through into the business, and I think customers can detect that. Probably not. They probably couldn't tell you exactly how they detect it, but I think it gives a flavour to the business that big corporates don't have. So, what I see myself doing is investing and almost riding that wave of entrepreneurial spirit, enthusiasm, and flair. So I want that all to continue, and what I will be is the kind of chairman or the non-exec who will occasionally say, years ago I made that mistake, you might want to be careful not to make the same mistake. So I see that much more as my role rather than directing operations. I would be worried in my investments if they were almost taking too much notice of me.
Okay. How about for you, Hacon?
Yeah, I think that is right. I think it's difficult to get that balance right. And I think that, I've probably made that mistake sometimes, you're jumping in there and being too operationally focused almost. Because in the end, if the investor goes in and starts making the decisions and takes away the ownership of these decisions from the restaurateur, then I think then you have failed that relationship. So it needs to be the balance, and if you can get away with just saying, talking about anecdotes from your past, I think then you're very, very good. But I think that it's a trial and error in these, because it is a unique situation every time you go into one of these.
Mm-hmm. Have you found a similar scenario?
Yeah, I agree with Michael and Paul. I just think that it's a very complex. F&B is very complex, and it's a multi-factor equation that you need to solve, and which for sure involves the great food, great service, but also social media, great operation. And every time it's different when you change the size of your company. So what we want to do is just to help the manager in the dimension where you feel less secure. We don't want to take decisions on his behalf, because if we decide to invest in a company, we believe that he's the right person lead the company, and it's the right concept, but just want to see how could we, what could we leverage to help him just go faster or bigger.
And on that point, do any of you try and find synergies between your investments? So it could be that it may be the legal or some financial piece, or are you letting them all run as independent companies?
Mine are all independent, totally independent. I mean, if they often speak to each other, which I think is a healthy thing, and they can compare ideas because they're going through similar challenges. Sometimes they do end up sharing advisors or sharing. They might share a software supplier if one person's found something that's particularly good or innovative, but only in a kind of if it works, then do it. I would never try and insist that there was any commonality of support office or anything like that.
Yeah.
No, I agree with that also. This is very boring.
Yeah.
But yes,
say something really controversial. And then
no, we standardize everything. No, I think it is again the same point as before, that if you force people to live within a too constraining structure, then you take away the ownership of the decisions, and it's too easy for people to either say, well, I couldn't do anything because you told me to do this, or if something doesn't work, then you're the one ending up having to fix it.
So on that note, is there anything particularly exciting that you do that's different from everybody else that you really want to champion?
Oops. No, I think that what we're trying to do is also because we're coming from an operating background as an operator, trying to bring some of the ideas that we have seen work in some of the restaurants, bring them into the new places, but without taking over the ownership, without taking over the decision making about these things here, but really challenge on some of the areas where we think that we have made a difference, and where we have seen that it can make a difference also to the organization. And that can be in many areas, from sort of the focus on raw materials to cooking philosophy almost, or to the social engagement and the values that lie beyond just immediate commercial boundaries of the business.
Laurent, is there a specific set of areas that if you're going in and looking at an investment, you're thinking this is exactly what I want to see? It's not necessarily a formula, but something to say, I want to tick this, and this box. Is there anything in particular?
Well, it's a difficult question to answer like this. I would say that we really focus on the team and momentum and concept, and rather than the way they do it, because I don't think there is one way that works for every business, but multiple ways that could bring you somewhere.
It's about people and concept.
It's about people, people, product, understanding of your market, where you want to go, what is your vision, how you want to achieve that, and bringing support to the entrepreneur, where sometimes could be alone, just knowing that he has someone that's a sparring partner he could speak with help him develop his vision and develop his business.
Mm-hmm. How about same question to you, Paul?
So I've got a corny line here. I look for 3 illities, and the 3 illities I look for are durability. So I like concepts that are going to be around for some time, and they're not going to be too fashionable, which gets back to my point about liking things that are quite mainstream. So durability, scalability. So scalability is all about, again, being relatively mainstream, but also simple. You can scale things if they're simple. If they're really complex, so I doubt whether Stuart would ever want to have 50 3-star Michelin restaurants, because they're quite kind of, I don't know, he might, but they're quite complex to operate. Whereas simpler things can be scaled. So scalability is the second one. And then the third one is management ability. The thing that we all keep coming back to is that the success of these businesses is down to the talent and the ambition of the founders.
What are you looking for in terms of, if there's people in the audience here who are actively going to seek investment soon, what are you looking for when you say that manageability piece? What skills should be in that set?
Gosh, I mean, everything really. I think it starts with ambition, so you've got to be someone who's hungry to succeed. You've got to be open to advice, which is something we've all talked about. So there's some very, very bright people I've come across who I've ended up concluding I couldn't work with because I don't think they would ever listen. And it's not that I think I'm always right. I'm wrong far more than I'm right, but occasionally I might be right. So I'd like just to have that partnership dialogue. And then yes, you want as kind of broad a set of skills as possible. If I think about Hawksmoor, for example, I invested in that business when it had one restaurant, two young guys in London who had created a wonderful first restaurant, and they've proven to have every skill that you would want to see in scaling that business to a very substantial business that's next year will open in the World Trade Center in New York. So that's been an incredible journey, and it's not just about the concept, it's been about their ability to step up to every challenge, which encompasses operations, marketing, HR, training, culture, just everything. So you really need to be a pretty special person to be able to do all of those things.
And in your experience, Mikhail, what are the skills that you're more likely to be willing to kind of say, well, they can be brought in, so these are the core skills that I actively want to see?
In the business, when investing, I think it's they need to be standalone businesses. Right? So I think that if I hate speaking after you because it is these things. Because it is really that. Because it is really that it is a concept that can work, and with a management team that can work that concept. But I think that also what I'd be looking for is somebody who is actively wanting what we can offer. And I think that if we can just come in there and say, well, we can offer money, and somebody else can offer money, and they don't care. I don't think it's not really what we are looking for. We were looking for somebody who can see that the doors we can open, the doors or the people we can attract, or the decisions where we can coach and help to make better. If there is a sort of a hunger to have that kind of input, then I think that goes way beyond a lot of other things in the sort of more core business skills.
It's quite interesting in some of the experience that I've seen working with some investors is often it can seem quite one-dimensional in the respect of it's all about opening new sites. So growth comes through opening new sites. It's interesting knowing all three of you and having spoken to you in the past. Maybe that's a little bit different for you guys. Would you like to talk to that at all, Laurent?
It's a long journey when you decide to invest. You go with someone for years, and it may not happen as it was written on your business plan. It may go bigger, it may go in another direction.
Does anyone ever grow as quick as they say on their business plan? I don't think I've seen one yet.
Many things could happen, so I think that you really be sure that you understand really where the PE wants to go and where the entrepreneur wants to go. To be sure that you are ready to confront to any issue that will happen, because things will be different, and you will face some difference, because that's life in a business. You may need more cash to go faster. So you have to be sure that you create this relationship at the beginning, and that you really understand both what are your goals for the company, for the entrepreneur.
Okay, great. How about for you, Mikhail?
Well, I think it's difficult to generate real value as an investor without growth. So I think you do need the growth. I don't think you can. It's very difficult if you're constrained to in that respect. But I think that it is difficult, and it is. I think that in many markets it's getting more difficult. At least that's my experience. That the rents are high, and there's a tremendous competition for both customers and talent. So it doesn't really always go as fast as it should. But it should, in my view, always be part of the ambition level.
When you look at a business plan at the beginning of an investment, you only know one thing, and that's not going to happen. So sometimes it goes faster. In fact, I sold a business last year that went faster than the original business plan, but that's the only time it's ever happened to me. The thing I say about restaurant expansion is, of course, we all want to do it, and I love opening restaurants. I love seeing my businesses opening restaurants, but I want them to open good restaurants and profitable restaurants. Any idiot can open a restaurant. It takes, somebody of talent to open repeatedly really good, really profitable restaurants. And that's ultimately what it's about as an investor. And I would rather, if I think about what we discuss on our boards, most of the time it's the meaty stuff is about properties. It's about, should we open that restaurant? Should we expand into that region? And I think they are the big decisions. Actually, once you've got a restaurant format that works and you know roughly what you're doing and you've got all your support systems in place to expand, it becomes a series of property decisions. And they are key because you're signing, in the UK model is to sign leases for 25 years. So you're agreeing to pay a landlord a lot of money for 25 years. So you want to think very hard about that decision. So much as I'm massively in favour of expansion because that's ultimately what an investment's all about, I like boards to really think long and hard about how and why they expand.
I know that one great piece of advice I got given from someone on the board at Wagamama was they now work on a premise that if this was our first restaurant, would we open this? Because actually it's very easy, and I think that even in projects I've been involved with, it's very easy to be wooed by large developers who are offering you 6, 7, 8 sites, and suddenly you're signing sites on a bulk basis, and one of them's off plan, and you have absolutely no idea. And I think that's where it all starts to go wrong. Isn't it?
I think the other thing that people in the audience who know me well will know this is an obsession of mine is how much you spend on the restaurant as well. So there seems to be a trend. When you meet restaurateurs and they've just done their first couple, they've spent this much, and by the time they're on their 10th restaurant, they're spending this much. And you have to politely remind them that you used to be able to open a restaurant for that. What's happened in the intervening period? And a whole load of things have happened. You're opening at pace, and therefore it's a bit more expensive. But it's, as an investment, it's ultimately a numbers game. It's about how much profit do I get for spending that much money. So that's clearly better than that in terms of if you're getting the same profit.
And do you think, so going back to the original question around the property piece, it's how much support do you guys try and drive around ensuring that the brand is really driven as well as the property piece, and that actually there's much more emphasis or as much emphasis on getting what you've already got right? Because I think that's one of the other things, isn't it? It's taking your eye off the ball because you're off growing and letting this stuff not necessarily follow through.
I haven't really been into the game of real estate, so I'll probably keep that over to one of you.
If I understand the question correctly, it's about maintaining the quality of the overall brand.
And continuing to develop the brand as a whole.
I think it's the hardest thing about rollouts. Rollouts look easy on a piece of paper. You do a spreadsheet and you extrapolate the performance of your first restaurant across 50, and of course it shows that you're going to make loads of money. That's just the maths takes care of itself. But in the real world, you've got to run those first 10 as well, if not better, because your competition has got better when you're opening your 20th restaurant. So that is the hardest thing about rollouts. You're doing 2 or 3 things to a very high standard simultaneously, and looking after the brand and the historic estate and keeping an eye on the competition is incredibly challenging. So rollouts are a kind of weird thing. They look very simple and they sound very simple. I've got a restaurant model, I'm going to grow it to 20 and then I'm going to sell it. What could be easier? It's really hard, which is why I keep coming back to management ability, because it takes an exceptional team to pull that off.
And is there any pain points that you think you can particularly pick up on in terms of numbers of sites where things have to change?
Well, I think if you've got a small team, if you've got either a husband and wife team or a kind of a partnership, you can man-mark 2 or 3 restaurants. You can be at them pretty much all the time between you. Once you get up to 5 or 6 restaurants, it's a different game. You've got to start employing people to look after things for you. So what does that do? That means you've got to trust people to look after things as well as you would. It also means that your profits are probably going to go backwards slightly because you're investing in central support costs. So yeah, there is definitely points of inflection along that journey.
I think that's the really interesting point. A lot of the work that I get involved with, that's the point that people start to struggle, is when you are building that central overhead. And I like Luke Johnson's piece on 7 and 17 sites. Yeah. So his two pinpoints, and I think that, from the experience I've had, it's not far wrong. But we've got a couple of minutes for questions from the audience. We've got someone on the front here and another gentleman here. Someone will run with a microphone. There we go.
Thank you. Martin Morales from Ceviche and Andina Peruvian Restaurants in London. You three gentlemen, I admire you greatly. Congratulations. I've followed your careers and your successes, and it's great to have you here. All I would ask you is, I learn from success. I learn from your CVs, the things that we read about you, and some of you I've had the pleasure of talking to. But success comes with also failures and mistakes. And as the investor and the partner in some of your projects that you've worked on over the years, and particularly in the last sort of 5 or 10 years, please can you, each of you, give us an example of a mistake that you've learned from and improved from in that partnership or for a future partnership? A specific example. You can name names if you want or not, but it'd be really interesting to hear one of those.
Well, as an operator, we even with a successful name as Lucas, we made many mistakes, from picking the wrong spot to picking the wrong partner, to not understanding a market we go in because it's abroad and believing that what we have done in our own country will work abroad. But there is only one mistake, is that if you don't fix it. Because if you fix it, people forget that you made a mistake. Even if you close your restaurant, then you don't have a restaurant that is not working that is not there, so for people to remind you that you made a failure. So I think in this business, you just need to adapt. And I'm sure it's the same for Gordon, that you may open something using exactly the same recipes than the one who was a success, and this one failed because you made a mistake somewhere. Just you need to fix it right away. And it's a trial and error businesses. It's just if you don't move on and don't, you're not ready to change, that is really a mistake. That's my part.
I think the biggest mistake that we made is compromising on people quality in hiring decisions, and letting somebody get away with hiring somebody, or letting myself get away with hiring somebody, might be good enough, but probably might not, and then say, well, we need somebody, so let's just run the risk, and that's not good.
I bought a business about 10 years ago that proved to be a disaster. It was a business that needed turning round, and I thought, or me and the people who bought it thought that we knew exactly what needed to be done to turn it round in terms of spending on the restaurants and management input. And I should have known this was going to go wrong when I won an award for the transaction. I think I won a transaction of the year, which is always a kind of kiss of death. And it was a sort of unmitigated disaster, really. And my learning at the end of it was probably never to do that again, never to try and turn around a failing brand. I think it's really hard to do in such a competitive market where new stuff is coming along all the time. But if I ever did do it, I would have to spend twice as much as I thought I did. And the management team would need to be twice as talented to turn it around. I think it's a really hard task. So that undoubtedly was my toughest.
I think we're going to have to call it a day there. But thank you very much, gentlemen. And you are all around at the next day.